לו לבטא מוטיב אחד.
For Rosh Hashanah, and now we have one before Yom Kippur, so I will dedicate today's meeting to Yom Kippur. I'm basing, I mean, most of what I'm talking about is based on a book that Rav Steinsaltz published on the Jewish calendar, on the Jewish festivals. In English, it's called Change and Renewal. It's a translation of a book called Chayei Shana, this book. And the essays in the book are from all over, all kind of, so most of them, maybe all of them, were not written for the book. They were collected from all kind of sources over the years, where he published in articles in newspapers and in magazines, and some are like speeches that were written down and edited, etc. And there is in the book, there is a group of a few essays that were originally interviews that he was interviewed to the French television, to some French television channel, I think in the 80s or the 90s. And really interesting interviews. They were edited into essays, but initially they're interviews. And so also today I'm going to base my my class mainly on this article on Yom Kippur. It's called 1 minute. It's called The Day of Atik Yomin, Teshuva and Yom Kippur. Really interesting essay. So we'll be reading quite a bit of it through today's meeting. But I'll just start with saying just a word about last week and maybe the connection between the two meetings. So last week, I don't think anybody, maybe I don't know, Elliot, you were in the beginning of last week. Chaya, you were here last week? All right, okay. So last week we tried to examine the idea of Teshuva, according to the way that Rav Steinsaltz presents it. And it's mainly, I mean, the way we discussed it was, the main focus was that it's basically a work of humans. So it's our job to do Teshuva. It's something that it's a project that we need to do. And talking about Yom Kippur is not the day of Teshuva. So Yom Kippur is the last day of the 10 days of Teshuva, the 30 Yom Teshuva. Yom Kippur is actually a day of Kapara. And what I'm trying to do is kind of to think about the two concepts. So Teshuva is our job, is our work, is our effort. It's something that we need to make sure to do. And Kapara, in a way, is the result, is what we aspire, what we're trying to achieve. Kapara means atonement, and Kapara is something that we can't do, right? We can get Kapara, and we're trying to bring ourselves to a place where we're ready. Hi, Peter. Good evening. We're trying to bring ourselves to this place where we are entitled to Kapara, and we get it, but it's not something that we do. So the question is, what do we need to do in order to get there, and how does it work? So we'll start by reading a few paragraphs, not from the essay I mentioned, actually from another one, a different one that discusses these two concepts of Teshuva and Kapara. So I'll share my screen and ask somebody to read. 1 minute. Okay, we'll start from source number 2, starting Yom Kippur. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So who can somebody volunteer? Chaya, thank you. Just make sure you put your microphone on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yom Kippur, as its name implies, is the day on which kapara is effected for the Jewish people's sins, a day that is centered around one basic idea, atonement. The idea of atonement is not identical to the idea of Teshuva, although they have a common element, recollection of sin and its renouncement. Still, there is a vast difference between the two ideas, both as regards their content and as regards man's attitude towards them. The essence of Teshuva is the effort of man turning back from his evil way and trying to rebuild a connection with God. Teshuva, therefore, is the glory of man, and the days of Teshuva are the great and sacred days of man. By contrast, atonement is an act of heaven. Man serves only in an instrumental capacity, embracing Teshuva and good deeds, so that the atonement may apply to him. But the essence of atonement is always and in every case God's grace coming from above.
It's just a bit more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You don't have to. I mean, we can. Yeah. Yes. I mean, read. If you still have patience, then read. Otherwise, we'll ask somebody to take over.
I'm glad to, unless someone wants to.
Okay. Thank you.
The difference between Teshuva and atonement can be discerned also in man's moods. The Baal Teshuva is in a state of sorrow, and the memory of sin is before him, as it says, "My sin is ever before me." Hence, Teshuva is accomplished through weeping and bitterness. Atonement is in every respect a joyous event. Although it's connected with the past sin, now, at the granting of atonement, it involves nothing but joy, the joy of purification and refinement. Even if the atonement of Yom Kippur depends on the Teshuva which precedes it, in accordance with the halacha that Yom Kippur atones only for those who return in Teshuva, nevertheless, this Teshuva is not an integral part of Yom Kippur itself. That is why, according to one opinion, the main confession of Yom Kippur is made just before, not during the holiday. Thus, the time for Teshuva is primarily before Yom Kippur, whereas Yom Kippur itself is purely the time of forgiveness and atonement for sin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I mean, I find this piece quite powerful. Piece. I mean, it's quite surprising that he describes. He distinguishes between the two so sharply, right? But I think it's a very important distinction. I mean, especially the last bit where he talks about the fact that actually all these viduim that we do on Yom Kippur, we do 5 of them, right? We do a vidu on each prayer and on the Chazarat HaShatz also, right? So actually, according to what he's saying here, they're not even related to Yom Kippur. This is all something that we mainly do before Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we're just receiving the kapara, and it's a joyous event, as he said. Yeah. So I want to talk about this joyous event and how do we get there? So we'll go on to read, unless somebody wants to comment on this. We'll continue to read
Why does God desire or require kapara? I guess out of like Rahmanas, I understand for us.
Yeah, I think this is something he grants us. I don't know if it's his interest to have a kapara.
Right.
Maybe it is. It's like an opportunity that he gives us once a year to get.
And what's the effect of kapara? Is it that God no longer concerns Godself with our past and with our sin?
The effect
is it that we are freed of the burden of guilt?
Yeah, it's a freedom for us. Kapara, literally, the word lechaper literally means to wipe off. So it gives us a new start in the deepest sense. I mean, we'll discuss this. We'll read a few paragraphs about what it means to like the effect that it has on the past. Like it actually, I mean, this is the conception. Conception is that it actually does erase the past. It actually gives us a real new page. And the question is, how do we allow it to happen? And this will be the main thing that we'll discuss. Yeah. Okay. So let's read the next source. This is from the beginning of this essay that I mentioned. He starts by talking about the names of God, the names of creation. He mentions two names. He mentions the name of Elohim, which is the name of the tzimtzum, of the gvura. It's the name in which things can be put in. It can be limited. So the limitation of the godly light, so to say, allows it to create, to make a being out of him. And this is one name he talks about. And the second name related to creation is the Shem Havaya, which is the name that is where we're within the limitation, the limited light of God, we can still see him. This is the name of Havaya. And the verse about Yom Kippur says, Lifnei Havayat Itharu, that you will be purified even before the name of Havaya. So he's discussing this idea and trying to show how it works and what does it mean in terms of the allowance of atonement. So I'm going. I by mistake I organized my sources not according to the right order. So we're going back to source 1, which is just starting just where I stopped. So he was describing these two names of God as the names that allow the regular system of the world to work. The name of Elohim and the name of Havaya. And Yom Kippur is something beyond that or before that. Elliot, can you read for us? Unless Chaya wants to do it again.
Yeah,
today I brought lots of text today. I beg your pardon. But the texts are so beautiful. I couldn't stop myself. At some point I thought, maybe we should just read the whole essay from beginning to end. But I mean, we're doing almost that, I think. So yeah. So source number 1, the idea.
Happy to, unless you want to, Chai. Okay. The idea of Teshuva and forgiveness is not part of the natural system of the world order. On the contrary, it is in complete opposition to it. The laws of physical nature, like all the laws of reality, say that we cannot go against them without being harmed. One cannot put his hand into the fire without being burned. One cannot walk in snow without freezing. Within this system, one cannot say, sorry, I made a mistake. A person who jumps off the roof cannot become remorseful halfway down and say, I didn't mean to do it. Like the rest of the laws of nature, there is also a law that says a person cannot sin without the sin making a difference in his world, without it cutting off part of his soul, without it leaving a stain on reality. By the laws of nature, in the case of sin too, there is no room for remorse and forgiveness. Nevertheless, there is the possibility of teshuva and atonement. What this means is that a person can say, I am sorry, I have remorse. One can turn back the clock and erase the sin as though it never existed. This possibility derives by definition from a higher level which is not bound by laws, neither by those of physical nature nor by those of spiritual nature. For this reason, Yom Kippur, the day of Teshuva and Atonement, is the day Lifnei Hashem, before the Tetragrammaton, before there existed a name. It is a day of ascending above the world's fundamental laws to the Holy One, blessed be He Himself, the Ein Sof, the infinite being, who is not defined by any name or by any constricting, bounded framework of necessity and law.
Okay, so the possibility, as he is saying, right, the possibility of tshuva or atonement is to somehow get beyond, get to a higher level, which is, I'm quoting, which is not bound by laws, neither by those of physical nature, nor by those of spiritual nature. So it's going even beyond spirituality. And we'll see. He has a really interesting insight about spirituality. We'll see it in a bit. But here he is setting like the framework in which he'll be discussing atonement. So atonement can be allowed or can be achieved. I think allowed is better way to describe what he's saying. So atonement can be allowed if we manage to be Lifnei Hashem. So the verse says, Lifnei Hashem titharu. This is a verse that talks about Yom Kippur. Lifnei Hashem titharu. You need to be before the name. You need to be beyond this, be out of the regular systems. So again, the question is, how do we get there? What does it mean to get there? What do you think?
I think it's a remarkable concept that you can break this linear time and thinking, break the cause and effect, in essence, of our world, whereby something that you do has consequences. The question is, even if we can get to a stage where, let's say, the state of the world or nature through the Ein Sof has broken through this boundary, how can we stop something we did from having an effect on others who may not have undergone the kapara that we have, unless the kapara encapsulates the entire world and all the people within it? In which case, then, how do we explain moments of the past which do come back and haunt the present, or consequences that haven't been undone? But it's a very beautiful passage.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to what you just said at the end. I think it's a good question, of course, and I think that what he's trying to say is that basically, kapara is, I mean, the kapara of Yom Kippur is something that we receive, but we do have some influence on the maybe on the depth that it gets to us, and it does seem he does seem to argue that if you do it, one can do it deep enough, actually free himself from things from the past. At least internal things, internal boundaries or limitations, things that limit us internally. We have this opportunity to untie them if we do get deep enough. And so we'll read a shorter passage now, about which more, I think, in a way completes this idea that we saw now, and then we'll go deeper into. He gets into a few types of tshuva, and we'll see what he says there. But I want to read number 3, which is number 3 is just this shorter piece, starting Yom Kippur, about purity. Can somebody read? Or should I read? Peter, thank you. It's a good choice, Peter, because this is the shortest one.
No. Wait. allow me just a second. First of all, I'm participating on my phone, not on my computer. So I've got a tiny screen.
Oh no!
And, as I read the passages, it's like I can read one word on the screen. So
you want me to send you the text?
Well, can I just ask a question or reflect on something else? Because listening to Chaya and Elliot and yourself before on what they read, I found myself, even now, I'm like flitting from, in a sense, if you don't get the whole job done, you've done nothing. If I can't remove the effect of the things I've sinned, done wrong on others, on myself, if I can't remove it all, it's as if I've done nothing. And then the whole thing becomes so awesome, and I feel a bit disabled. And I'm just wondering if it's not about tiny incremental steps. I mean, just if I can make some step forward in myself, or some step forward in the harm that I may have done to others, and then next time make another step forward, and then another step forward, because otherwise I feel like really disabled. But then I just wonder if I'm not giving myself excuses. And I'm just finding a kind of cheap way of copping out. And this is a loop I'm going through as you guys are reading and thinking. At the moment, I'm veering to well, if I can just move 3 molecules to a better position, that's already good. Because otherwise, I really, if I've got to move the whole structure or the whole history or the whole character flaw, I just don't know how to do it. But I wonder how people feel about that. That was all. I mean, does it have any... Changing everything seems a bit magic wand to me where I stand at the moment. And I've misplaced my magic wand. When you kind of get to my age, you forget where you put it. That's it. That's all I really wanted to say. I think it's really powerful and beautiful stuff that you brought to us, Yisrael. Really, kind of quite magic.
I think there is something very, I mean, I'll say about what I think, but I'll be really glad to hear what other people think about your, I think that for me, what you said makes it, I mean, it makes it even more attractive. Yeah, I mean, kapara can happen in different levels maybe, and in a way I can allow, what I allow it happens. So even if I don't allow the whole thing through, there is still a change that is done. And yeah, and the next time we can start from a different place. I find it very reassuring. But it also reminds me of a story that a friend, one of our friends, he said that one of the stories that he had about Rav Steinsaltz is that he used to have he used to make Seudat Mashiach. That was it's like a Chabad traditional event on the last day of Pesach. And he used to talk on this event. He used to talk about Mashiach. What does it mean to bring redemption to the world? What's the concept of redemption? And he said that once he asked, he said that Rav Steinsaltz said something like, redemption means that there is what's the word? A change in the world that cannot be undone. Like I don't know, I don't have the right phrase now. It's something that you do a change that can't be redone. So my friend asked him, like, give me an example of such a thing. So he said, teaching a little child Aleph Bet. So this is a redemption. I mean, it's a tiny bit of redemption, but it's something that it's something that can't be undone, right? So your idea reminded me of that, right? Yeah.
And I still apologize for not being able to read because of the tiny screen that I'm looking at, and
okay.
Even with glasses, I can't handle it.
No,
Slicha.
Okay. So I'll read this passage, and then I'll ask Elliot and Haya to read the next one,
okay,
because they are longer. Let's see if I need to share the screen again, I think. Yeah, okay, this is just the I think in a way, for me, it's just the end of the previous idea that we read. Yom Kippur is a day of purity. For on this day, atonement shall be made for you, to purify you of all your sins. Before Hashem, you will be purified. This is the verse. This exalted purity is the level of the soul in and of itself, before it descends and is clothed in something. For on this day, atonement shall be made for you, to purify you, no matter what the situation, even when the mitzvot are not carried out. In a certain sense, this level is even higher than the sacred level of who has sanctified us with his commandments. This is what we say when we do a mitzvah, we say Asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav. So he's saying this is, in a way, this is a higher level. Why? Which pertains to fulfillment of the mitzvot. To be holy means to belong to a state of being that is different, distinct, and more exalted, but which still has its own independent existence, whereas purity is the nullification of existence vis-a-vis God, like the color white, which has no hue, no defined cast or appearance, because it contains all the appearances, the integrity of the whole before it divided into parts. There is a high level where everything is in harmony, and a still higher level where things do not exist at all, where even harmony does not exist, where there is only the one thing before it begins this is the level of Yom Kippur before Hashem. Yeah, so this is just another phrasing of the same thing. Like the color white, the color white represents a lot of what we see in Yom Kippur, right? The white clothes of the high priest, and the white piece of wool that was hung over the entrance to the temple that becomes white, and also the kapara, the tahara and kapara. They are represented by the color white. The color white is as he said here, contains all the appearances. Yeah, so he's making here this distinction again between kadosh and tahor, or kadosh and or kapara and kedusha. So kedusha is a high level of existence, whereas kapara comes when we manage to get even higher than this, higher than the kedusha. Okay, so he goes on to say that he describes 3 levels of tshuva, that eventually the third and highest level of tshuva enables the atonement, enables the kapara. He goes with the concept of nefesh, ruach, neshama. So according to Kabbalistic sources, our soul is built of 3 or sometimes 5, but usually the sources talk about 3 levels, 3 layers in the neshama, and the 3 layers are nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So the English translation would be, I guess, soul, spirit. Actually, I'm not sure how he. Let's see if I can remember how he translates the 3 levels of tshuva. Vital soul, so nefesh is the vital soul, ruach is spirit, and neshama is innermost soul. Okay, so, and he says that there is a level of tshuva that relates to each one of these levels in our soul. The first level, the basic level, is connected to the level of nefesh, which is the regular, like the day-to-day, our day-to-day soul, day-to-day life soul, and that is when we do something wrong. When we do tshuva about it, then this is tikkun shel nefesh, actions. So the tshuva on actions. A higher level of tshuva is a tshuva about our spirit, about our ruach, about our, and he connects it here to tshuva on our thoughts. So sometimes we think to do something wrong. We don't always fulfill it and go and do it, but we think to do something wrong, or we think wrongly. We think the wrong way. So this is the second level of tshuva, is to correct, to refine the layer of our thoughts. And the highest level, the third level, and we'll read this inside, is the level of the innermost soul. And this is beyond things that happen. This is kind of getting our soul back to its source. So this we'll read inside. On our next source, it says the third level of tshuva. And only this level kind of, this allows us to be granted, or to receive, or to have the kapara affect us. Okay, so now I need this is long. I couldn't resist. So I took, okay, number 4. We need somebody brave or with lots of patience.
I'm happy to read.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
On the foregoing level, one can also reach the third and highest level of Teshuva, which is rectification of the neshama. Here, we are not talking about the return to a former pattern, no matter how perfect, which existed before any distortion or corruption, but about a level that transcends everything that existed beforehand. Now, what is rectification of the neshama? The nefesh can sin, the ruach can become impure, but the neshama always remains pure, and neshama tahora. Indeed, the soul itself is pure, but it may happen that the soul and man are separated. The soul is found in one place, and the man in another. In such a case, the teshuva of the neshama is its return to the man. The man, Adam, who on the one hand was created from the earth, Adamah, and on the other hand is epitomized by, I will be like Edameh, the Most High, attains through the joining of body and soul an overall perfection that surpasses the perfection of each one of his components by itself. This level of teshuva is the level of man as envisaged in divine thought, not as he is, not as pure as he was, tahora he, but as God wants to see him, and as he fulfills the original aim. The level of neshama in man is a separate level, separate not only from man's physical being, but also from his spiritual being, from the levels of the nefesh and the ruach. Generally speaking, the Jewish conception is that the spiritual and the physical are not, in essence, distinct from each other. The spiritual is not, in essence, better and holier than the material. And just as the material can be base and evil, so can the spiritual. In contrast to both the material and the spiritual stands the holy, which is separate and distinct in essence from every other reality. An analogy to this may be drawn from the following. Once, scientific theory assumed a clear partition line between matter and energy. The assumption was that the matter is of one nature and energy is of another. In modern physics, however, matter and energy are conceived of as one combined essence, as different phases of the very same thing. The essential partition line of reality has moved beyond the physical world to the distinction between the material and the spiritual. However, the Jewish conception rejects this division also. It sees the difference between the material and the spiritual as a difference of form, not of essence, whereas the essential division is between the holy, which is the distinct element, and the other modes of life, which can be material or spiritual. A person can be connected to the realm of the holy in a physical manner, and he can be far from holiness even when engaged entirely in spiritual matters. The Jew's neshama, however, pure neshama, is a holy soul, and it belongs to the realm of the holy, which in essence is distinct.
Okay, Elliot, can you just pause for 2 minutes? Because it's very long and I want to... no, I'm not. I know very little about sciences, so I don't fully understand what he was just saying about the difference between energy and material. Maybe somebody here has more knowledge and can help us. But I just wanted to comment that this kind of explanation based on natural sciences is something that Rosh Hashanah used to do a lot. He was really he used to bring lots of examples and ideas based on natural sciences. So years ago, I had an idea of maybe trying to collect all his insights about natural sciences. I tried to start, but I never went on with it. But I think this is really important. Spirituality, and I mentioned it earlier, right? So he's saying that a person can be separated from his neshama, in the sense that he can be a good person, he can be a spiritual person, but he's not really connected fully to his real I don't know what the word will be, to his true existence. I don't know. And the aim, the original. I mean, Elliot, you asked in the beginning. You asked what's his. I don't remember how you phrased it, but you asked what's his motivation. Why is he interested in kapara? So here, I think we can find an answer, because he's saying that the aim of the creation was to make a person, and a person is a combination, right? A person. The aim of creation of man is to create this combination between material and not spirituality, but because he just explains and holiness, right? So when one gets to Teshuva in that level, this is, in a sense, this is when he fulfills the original idea of creation. Otherwise, we do all kind of things, but we don't really get there. We don't really connect the two realms in the way that we are able to. Okay, let's continue.
What was sorry, can I just briefly go back and ask what when he mentioned Adamah and Adam and Edameh?
Yeah, so the word Adam, man, in Hebrew, is related both to Adamah, which is earth.
Yeah.
So Adam is made from Adamah. But the Midrash also says that Adam is called Adam because he wants to be like God. He wants to be Domeh, Edameh. I will be like. So Adam has this aspiration, and not only aspiration, he has also this ability, right? He comes from the earth, and he has ability to be godly, almost godly. So yeah, this is the tension, or the
right. So was the idea that neshama also has the aspiration to return to holiness?
I think that the idea is that Adam can fulfill his nature of Edamel Elyon by connecting to his neshama, by making sure that there is a connection.
Got it.
By finding his own neshama fully. Rav Steinitz used to say many times that the difference between the DNA of a person and a chimpanzee is only 2% or 3%. Like in 96 or 97%, the DNA is identical. He said this 3% is what our job is. This is the difference between Adamah and Edameh, right? Okay.
Great. Okay. As we have stated, the third level of Teshuva is the restoration of the neshama to man. The preceding levels of Teshuva merely prepared the ground so that the neshama would be in him. It is told of the Kotzker Rebbe that he asked his disciples, "Where does God reside?" They of course answered, "God resides everywhere." He responded, "Not so. God resides wherever man lets him in." The same applies to the holy neshama. In order for it to reside in man, one must first make room for it. But, in addition, one must find the neshama, and the neshama is to be found not outside, but inside. He who roams in all sorts of places so as to generate experiences will not find the neshama there. The neshama is to be found in the depths, when a person digs within his own being, searching for the true I. After one divests himself of the external expressions and removes all the husks, a bond of near identity is formed between the neshama, man's personal I, and God. The prophet Jeremiah asks, "Why are you like a stranger in the land?" Sometimes the state of the world is such that God, as it were, is a foreigner in it. Man must nullify this foreignness. Not only that, but he must nullify even the very possibility of saying that God does not belong here. Towards this end, man must search and discover within himself that God belongs, that he is present, that it is God who is his whole existence. To find the neshama, man must transcend the external things. He must search for what truly matters to him, for the first true single kernel of life, because that is where the neshama is, and thus that is where God is. When man searches for God as he searches for the ones he loves, indefatigably by day and by night, ultimately he will find him in his innermost being. After this being is cleared of all the coverings and all the lies that obscure it, the lies that he tells others, and especially the lies that he tells himself, he will discover that the rock of my heart and my portion forever is God. When the essence of my heart is my holy neshama, God too is found there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. So on Yom Kippur, we're trying to dig, like this way he described it, to dig within ourselves, to remove the lies that we tell others and the lies that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I really think that Rosh Hashanah, when he used to talk on Yom Kippur himself, he used to describe Yom Kippur himself as a process in that effort. For example, the way he always talked about Kol Nidrei in the beginning of Yom Kippur. So what's the idea of Kol Nidrei? The idea of Kol Nidrei is we are untying ourselves from things, right? We're starting from the external things. We untie ourselves from things that we committed to do. We want to kind of eventually, layer after layer, get rid of all the things that might disturb us in getting to a state where we can truly and authentically look at ourselves, so that eventually during Yom Kippur we'll get to this level of Lifnei Hashem, of revealing and finding our own soul, our own neshama. So, okay, our time is getting to an end. I think that, I mean, the feeling that I get overall is that Yom Kippur basically, there is something very complicated trying to do what he was just describing, but there is also something very simple about Yom Kippur in that description. The atonement, the kapara, is something that is granted to us. We need to allow it. And our way to allow it is just trying to be true and trying to be simple and just do things correctly and clear off all the things that disturb us on the way. I mean, unlike maybe Rosh Hashanah, there was something more, at least the way I think about it. In Rosh Hashanah, there is something more complicated. We're trying to make God our king. We're trying to refine our direction in the world and all kind of these kind of things that they need more maybe preparation and thought. At least to me, they seem more complicated, more complex. Whereas on Yom Kippur, there is something simple, something that needs to happen, and we need to not disturb too much. And our job is to, as I said, our job is to stay true to ourselves, try to look into ourselves and clear away things that just bind us to the wrong directions. Yeah, and then it will happen. Maybe not always in the most in the the entire depth. It can happen, but it will happen in some level at least. Yeah, this is how I kind of see it. I want to read just a tiny bit more, another. Okay, it's too long. I don't want to read the whole thing, but 1 minute. He has here a long passage about crying crying in general, and I think also crying in Yom Kippur, because there is a thing with crying that it comes from within, and he says sometimes someone thinks that he cries because of it, something, but the cry itself can come from a deeper place that will show the maybe we'll read a bit of it. It will be better than me trying to yeah, let's read from here. On the second day of creation,
on the second day of creation. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. You can go.
No, Elliot. I didn't want to ask again, but if you do it,
no, I'm happy to. On the second day of creation, God separated the upper waters from the lower waters. The waters, like all of reality, were divided into two: the waters above the firmament, which is the part that is near God and feels God, and the lower waters. In the Zohar, it says that ever since the division, the lower waters have been weeping. We too wish to be before the King. This weeping is not the result of an aberration or deviation in the world, of the world itself. As the lower part of the world bitterly complains, why are we not in heaven? When Pharaoh's daughter finds Moshe, she opens the ark and sees a boy crying. Hearing him crying, she says, this must be one of the Hebrews, the Hebrew children. How does she know? Because he cries. If he cries, it is a sign that he is a Jew. This crying does not express a personal tragedy, but a more fundamental tragedy, the tragedy of one who feels that he must become much more than he is, regardless of where he stands now. The Jew's soul weeps because the world weeps, and because he, Jew, represents the world. The Jew corresponds to the soul of the world, the conscious part within the world, which bears within the world what transcends the world. Hence, the Jew always feels that he must surpass and transcend himself. This he feels not as his personal and private problem, but as a limitation of the world, which is merely the world, and of man, who is merely man. He feels the pain, the inadequacy of all existence, and because of this he cries, regardless of whether he is wicked or righteous, whether he weeps for his own existence or for existence qua existence. The soul, which is the inwardness of all of creation, expresses its inner will to return from reality to the source. This would explain the statement by our sages that Teshuva preceded the world. Teshuva preceded the creation of the world and everything that goes on in the world, including sin. For Teshuva is not intended only for transgressors. It is intended for every man on every level, as long as he is merely man, and as long as he aspires for more.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think I'm done. I just find these texts very powerful. I don't want to ruin them chatting more about them. But I would love to hear if any of you have anything to say before we finish.
I just had one question. I also don't want to take away from the very powerful end, though, because I think it is a very powerful end. But it's just, obviously, Rav Steinsaltz was suggesting that man's inner connection with God and with the innermost being, which is not separate from God, is the neshama. And the question is, once we've restored the neshama, what is the difference between the neshama and God? Or is the difference very blurred?
I think that when saying the phrase "restored the neshama" means, in a sense, means connecting ourselves to God in a tighter link. So, or reconnecting ourselves to God. So, what's the difference? There's still a difference. I mean, the Chazal say that neshama is chelek, is like it's a part of God that was separated and put away. So, but it's still, I mean, God is still something completely different. I mean, we can try and get here to all kind of very complex definitions, discussing the godly nature, right? Or not nature is the right term. But here, I think that the terms here are not. I'm not sure how precise they are in that sense. I mean, they're surely not. They're not giving here with the entire kind of system, like is discussed in length in other in books and etc. But here the neshama here represents the piece in us that can be the closest to God. I guess something like that. I don't know if it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Anybody wants to say anything before we finish? Okay. So this series has ended. So first of all, I wish you, I say thank you for coming, and I hope you gained anything. If anybody wants, I'm going to put.
I think Peter wants to say something maybe, but he's on mute.
Peter.
You need to turn off mute, Peter.
Okay, I got that. First of all, if I can quite humbly correct you, this series is not ended, because particularly a number of things that were said this evening, yet alone last week, are going to be with me for a very, very long time. So at a very personal level, the series is not ended at all.
Great, I'm really happy to hear.
Well,
I hope, yeah.
The other thing, the final passage that Eliot wrote is like so powerful. It almost renders one speechless. But a good Galicianer is they're most fluent when rendered speechless. It seemed to me at a very personal level. I mean, we were talking about, or writing about collective role, responsibility of Jews in this world. And it brings very much to me, I was just thinking about Yom Kippur, even Rosh Hashanah, the Beit Knesset. If you indulge me just for a second, I'm speaking from England. I came here around Purim time for 10 days. And because of COVID and bidud and lockdown and blah, 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 I'm still here and desperately trying to get back. It's one of the things that struck me was as I say, not just a kind of personal responsibility, but a kind of responsibility we have as Jews to the world, to outside ourselves. And one of the things that leaping forward to Yom Kippur, it's the tension I feel when I'm in a minyan. Davening by myself is absolutely wonderful because the speed is perfect and my pauses are perfect and fits my entire kahila of me. But I'm not part of. And I go to any Beit Knesset and, you know, they always daven too fast and too slow and they're noisy and they don't understand. But boy, am I part of. And it's that tension. And I mean, for me, I've never been able to resolve it. And I think it's important that I don't resolve it. Because those are like the two aspects. And I think that maybe, I admit this is a very prosaic sort of way, but I think that's one of the things that Rav Steinsaltz was referring to as well, in terms of the Jew has a responsibility that's greater than himself or herself. That was it. And as I say, the program is not finished, not for me. Thank you, Yisrael.
It's a really, Peter, it's a really beautiful idea. No, I'm not saying beautiful in an insulting way. Really beautiful.
go ahead, everyone else does. I've said all I wanted. Thank you, but really, Mamash, thank you. And not just to you, Israel, to all the others who I was only in this last week and this week, but I think that their thoughts were, as I say, just, it's not finished for me.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we might continue. I mean, I don't know.
No. I'm not trying to put you under pressure in that way. I'm just saying that the words, the thoughts, the ideas are all so valuable to me. But I know that sometime, I don't know, tomorrow, next month, I'm going to be drinking a cup of coffee and suddenly I'm going to start thinking again about something that was said or read in one of these sessions. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay. And get me back to Israel, quick.
We're working on it, Peter.
Be well, everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. I sent my email address in the chat here. If anybody wants the sources or anything, so that's an easy way to get in touch. For the ones you can also, so you can message me and I'm happy to send like the sources or some of the sources to you if you want. You can copy it now before we close the meeting. You can copy my email address. It's quite easy, Malkiel.22@gmail. And yes, so have Ktiva v'chatima tova, everybody, and Shana Tova.
Thank you
hope to see everybody when they want to come back to Israel, or me to come back to England or elsewhere. Okay, be well, take care.
Thank you, Chag Sameach. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed these so much.
Chag Sameach, Gemar Chatima Tova.
Chatima Tova.